All right, another podcast from the Michigan Institute of Athletics in Brighton, Michigan. It's going to be an awesome podcast today. Super excited about this weekend coming up. Right before we get into it, I want to shout out VetLife. VetLife is a 501c3 nonprofit company. It's a company of veterans for veterans. Every veteran faces difficulties when they transition from active duty back to civilian life, and VetLife is there to ease that transition. If you'd like to reach out to VetLife, you can do so through Instagram or Facebook, or check out their website at vetlifetoday.org. So without further ado, I want to introduce Alfredo Freddy Rodriguez. Super exciting. We have your professional MMA debut finally booked, scheduled this weekend. We had one scheduled, it fell through. But you're going to be fighting as a professional this weekend. First of all, let's start the episode with, how does that sound?
Man, dude, it's been a long time coming, and so it's like it's surreal, you know what I mean? So it's definitely exciting, and I don't think it's really hit me yet, you know. And I think I'm also like taking it as just like another fight. So to me, it's like just going in there and doing what I need to do. So I mean, it's exciting, but at the same time, it's just the same old business.
So let's start your story by taking it all the way back, because you're known all around Michigan for your wrestling accolades and like what you did as a competitor. And for the people that don't know you, like, we should tell that story. So let's go all the way back. You know, were you born and raised here in Michigan? Kind of like talk about your early days, how you found the sport of wrestling. Was it your first sport? Let's just start to build your story forward.
Okay, so we'll start out with I went through the foster care system, and we got taken away from my mother at like 3 years old, me and my little brother, Martin. And, we went through, I think, 2 or 3, maybe 4 foster homes. And then we ended up getting adopted, by some distant relatives. And, from that was like, my brother was 4 and I was 5. And, we got adopted in, I think it was January, and right away, so we had our family members were involved with some like dancing and whatnot, and so we started doing dancing. It was like Spanish dancing, and then we ended up moving into wrestling because my dad took us to it used to be called the CAC honor roll meet, and it was where all of like the Lansing area would get together, and all the best wrestlers would wrestle. And he took us there, and we watched the Holt guys wrestle, and they were good. They were good back then, and they have a good program. So he asked us. He was like, "You guys wanna win medals and trophies?" So we were like, "Oh heck yeah!" Because at the time we were just getting ribbons for dancing and stuff like that, and our recitals. And so like, the cool part was we already learned how to follow footwork and footsteps, and learn how to like, see something and then imitate it. And so like, when we started wrestling, it was almost like the same process of learning something. So the wrestling we just picked up really quickly, and then we had success right away. My brother and I think. So the funny story is, my first match I ever wrestled in my life, I actually lost to a girl. I got pinned by a girl, and she pinned me one-handed, and she was like fixing her hair while she while she pinned me, and I just came off the mat smiling, not even knowing what happened. But then like, my mom had a talk with me after that and was like, "Look, like, when you're out there, you're wrestling. She's not a girl; she's a wrestler. So you need to wrestle her like you do anybody else." And then after that, I think we both went undefeated. Our first, like, my brother went undefeated for like 3 or 4 years, and then I went undefeated for 2 years, right away. So it was just instantly having success, and then from there.
What do you think you attribute that to? Because wrestling's an incredibly difficult sport. You're brand new in it. You just started it. Obviously, you were dancers, so you have a good body awareness. Like you said, you could look at something and emulate it. But what do you attribute that quick success to?
I don't know. I think I would definitely attribute it to the coaches that we had there. They had phenomenal youth coaches out there, and Pat Whitford and Gilberto Lopez. Those are some of the names, and then just they had a very good youth program, and so like, being a part of that. I think between the dancing and knowing how to follow things, we could. I don't know. I read this one thing about it where it talked about it said basically how high level athletes are basically kinesthetic geniuses, where being able to see something and imitate it is like a form of genius. So I would say like some of it's natural ability to be able to see things. I think it's a gift to a certain extent. But then when you take that gift and you put work in, and you just, it was just, we were just naturally hard workers. As soon as we got in the room, we saw how like those Holt guys were working. So we started working just like them. And so we all the way up till middle school, we would see guys who were working and were having success. So as soon as we seen that, I think it was the work ethic, and then right away we had some level of aggression. I don't know if it was what we were going through, where we just had a chip on our shoulder already, and then you take that and you put all that into a pot, and then you throw them around with kids who are having who were brought up with their family typically, and stuff like that, who don't know have a chip on their shoulder, and now we get to go put people on their heads. So it's like I think all of it kind of boils down to just a bunch of good things, a bunch of things that lined up for us to end up being a good outcome.
Do you remember much of the foster home experience with it being like so young when you were such a young kid? Do you have any vivid memories from that point in time, certain points that stand out to you?
Yeah, so like my brother, for example, he blocked everything out. So his first memory is until he's like 7 or 8 years old. And me, my first memories, I even have memories from before I got taken away from my mom. So I have memories of all of my foster parents. I remember, um, oh, and that actually might be another reason why we already knew about wrestling, was because one of our foster families, their kids wrestled. So we actually got to watch some meets while we were in foster care. And so I would say, yeah, I have some memories. And the most vivid memory was like that I have that like kind of like stuck with me for a long time, was like crying in bed, wondering why nobody wanted us. And me and my brother had each other, and I was always there for him, and always had my arm over his shoulder kind of thing, letting him know that it's going to be okay. And then we got adopted, and then like another memory like from when I was 5, like right when we got adopted, was him sitting on the porch waiting for our biological mother to come get him. He kept saying, she's going to come get us, she's going to come get us. So that's another vivid memory at a very early age, was being and coming and stepping up and saying, hey, like mom's not coming, like this is our family now, like we were adopted. And so I understood at a very young age what was going on. So yeah, that's really the most vivid memory I would say is sitting in a bunk bed at one of our foster parents. It was the Rice family, and yeah, just crying and just wondering why nobody wanted us, and that was how it felt. And so I carried that weight with me for a long time.
Are you and your brother close to this day? Because, I mean, there's a lot of people when they go through traumatic experience, usually there's like a fork in the road. Some people turn that traumatic experience into greatness, into strength of character, into resiliency, perseverance, and they really are people that can kind of get to whatever goal they want because they've been through so much, right? Like most of the people that are super successful have been through a lot. But then there's a clearly defined other group where when they go through traumatic experience and they don't process it and they don't make or they don't create acceptance with the truth and just move in a good direction, they tend to go the opposite way. Is your brother similar to you, or did you guys grow apart over time?
So yeah, so basically it's kind of, we were close until we got adopted and started wrestling, and then we basically got put against each other to almost compete with each other and to try to one up each other. And then it became a competitive experience because our wrestling actually became like a thing of where it was our acceptance for our own parents. And it was like at a young age, we started going to nationals at like 7 years old. And then once that competitive, spirit came into the home, it really took us apart. And, he really despised of me for a long time. And I started having that competitive, competitive mentality. I just always tried to compete with him. He always tried to compete with me, and it divided us for a long time. And then, when I moved out of my house and at like 18, because of everything we were going through, I feel like he kind of really felt like I left him. at that home where things were pretty, pretty shitty, to be honest. And I felt, and then looking back, I'm like, damn, I did leave him, So like, there was a long period of time where he was like, that's not my brother, that's not my brother, and then it also affected him. So once I left, he was already going down a path of his own where I was in a path of destruction, and he followed that path of destruction. And then it took for him to go to prison to be able to figure himself out, and now he's doing a lot better where he's starting his own business with roofing and stuff like that. So he's finally getting to the point where he's now being able to take I don't know how we don't talk enough right now because we're not super close, but seeing it from the outside and seeing what he's doing, he's going to be a father coming up, of a daughter. And so he's starting to really understand and develop as a person since he's gotten out of prison. And I've noticed like tremendous amount of change in his growth and character. And so he's definitely on the up and up. So it's nice to see.
That's awesome to hear. And I can tell there's a sense of pride as you're saying that. Like, you're very proud of your brother that he's getting himself together, and it's because you're getting yourself together. If your life was still a wreck, you might be looking with resentment for that, right? I mean, that's like a lower caliber person. So you start to find success in wrestling. You and your brother, your self-worth and identity probably starts to become tied to you as a wrestler and winning as a wrestler. Talk about kind of how that built you as a young man, in your high school years. Was that like your identity, your thing was wrestling? And, like, I see a gentleman that sits across from me today that's made tremendous internal progress. But was that there in high school, or even when you were winning and doing well in wrestling? Did you have it together in here? Just talk about that period of your life.
Yeah, so I mean, like you nailed it with the identity thing. For like that was all I did was wrestle, and whether I was in trouble, whether I was suspended from school because I was a bully, with all the anger I had, I became a bully, and I became a person that no one wanted to be around in school, but people had to be around me because of my wrestling, and then I basically got the mentality that I can do whatever I want, and as long as I'm a good wrestler and take care of what I got to take care of on the mat, I can get away with it. And so then it carried away into, it getting in trouble in school, and then, it was never there was never like anything that took me away until one day, and this stems from even being, so I was molested as a child at 7 years old by someone in my family, and I think that's where a lot of the hate and a lot of the anger and everything came from, and then confusion with how to treat other people. And so then there was like sexual, I was sexual with girls in school, and I got into this situation where this girl who already hated me because of some situation with like her boyfriend on the wrestling team, it was just a bunch of stuff, and where she lied about me raping her. And so that's when the first time that I actually took a step back and was like, okay, I can't let this ever happen again. I put myself in a situation for a girl to be able to claim something that was false, and it totally changed my life. I had to go from Holt to Grand Ledge. I had to change schools. So that really set me back as far as being able to understand that I can't get away with, with whatever, because and it wasn't like that I got away with anything, because there was nothing, it wasn't rape, but that's what made me understand that, hey, I can get in trouble for anything at any given moment, and I'm not actually, that person that can get away with whatever. So that really made me also now, that made me later on after that scared to be able to even communicate with women on a level of any type of trust at all. So then even now to this day it affects me, but coming back into the point of like the mentality of how I was going off the rails, whether it was standing on the desk during class when the teacher turned around, dancing on the desk, and then before she would turn back around, sit back down in my chair, stuff like that, just being completely wild and out of control. And so that was really where I was at in high school. And then once that thing happened in high school where the girl lied about that also shifted a big change in my mentality.
I'm shocked that at that stage, trying to picture the man that you were, that you didn't just point fingers and be like, this person said this and it's all their fault. And you didn't just like go and continue to be the man that you were. It really was like a wake up moment for you. It drastically started to change the man that you were.
Yeah, so what happened was my dad. My dad was so set on me being a four-time high school state champion that he didn't want to clear my name. We had the opportunity to actually go and file a lawsuit against the school, file a lawsuit against the girl, go and straight on, because she didn't do a rape kit, she didn't do none of that because it wasn't true. So therefore, we had everything we needed to clear my name and to be like, cause then after that, I was known as the rapist, and it fucked with me for a long time. And I heard it when I went to Grand Ledge. I'd hear it in the hallways. It was bad, man. And so like, so hearing that stuff really, like, once my dad told me, he came to me and he's like, look, he's like, these are the two options we have. He's like, you either have a choice to fight the case. We're gonna have groups come out here and pitch tents, and we're gonna put it on the news. This is what my lawyer was telling him. We're gonna put it on the news. It's gonna be a big old thing, and we're gonna put Holt on blast. And I was like, or we can voluntarily withdraw from school. You'll voluntarily withdraw from school, and then you'll be in school right this next year, and you'll be wrestling again. I was like, no, I don't want that. I want to clear my name. And he said, well, that's not happening. So he came to me, asked me, and then said, nope, that's not an option. So now I had to sit here and then that whole time it happened like the week after the state tournament, which was in March. And so I had from March until that next school year rolled around to sit there and process everything. And like I said, wrestling didn't stop. That was when I went on a tear and had the most unforgettable year, where I won Fargo, I won the Triple Crown, I won Flow Nationals, I won Double Field as a cadets, and became the #1 wrestler in the country after that happened. Right after that happened, I went on a complete tear because all I was doing was training. And so like that time, I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was just who I am, that my parents were always big on, no matter what, taking responsibility for your actions. Regardless of what went on in the house, one thing that they always made me do was take accountability for my actions. And I think that was the biggest thing, was understanding that I put myself in that situation for that situation to even arise. And that's when I realized that it was my fault at the end of the day. Even though she lied and did all that, I gave her the power to lie on me. By being in a room alone with her, I gave her the power of my whole, of my future. And that was when things really started, opening, and I started really shifting.
That's incredible. I mean, you took personal responsibility for something that you didn't do, but you looked at it from the right lens of like, no, the responsibility was mine because I could have avoided that. I didn't have to be there. I didn't have to be around people that I don't fully trust. I didn't have to be in shady situations that are not good for me when I'm trying to be on the come up and someone can rip me down like that. Like, I don't need to be a part of that. That's huge, man. If you were the person that, played the victim and poor me, or why did this happen to me, or this person's bad, you would have gone down a completely different path. You took personal responsibility and said, my actions control my life. And that's huge. That's a realization that most people don't come to till substantially down the road, especially not as kids. Like, before you're out of high school, you're still a kid. You don't know that at that age because you view yourself as older. You're older than you were in fourth grade, but you're still a kid. You know what I mean? And for you to look inward and find personal responsibility, that's huge. And for any good or bad that might have come from that family, because I don't know the whole story there, them teaching you personal accountability and responsibility probably was a pivotal thing to help at least keep you on track to some degree versus going down a really bad path. So did you finish at Grand Blanc then? And then did you go off to college to wrestle, or like what came up after this point? You're smiling, so I'm ready for the story. Tell me.
So yeah, it gets crazy. And so that right there, so what I just said about the battle of understanding that I'm responsible for who I put myself in around. That became, before I tell this next part, that is going to come important later on and as we move forward, because that's something I battled with as time went on, was who I put myself around. That became the next battle. But so after that, I went to Grand Ledge. I won a state title there, which was our whole like big time rival school. So it was crazy. So I went to Grand Ledge. And then I turned 18 during my junior year. At the end of my junior year in April.
Wait, how's that?
So my dad actually held me back in 8th grade because in wrestling, you can be 19. If you can be 19 during your senior year and still compete in sports as long as it's after the first day of school.
I've actually heard of that. I've heard of other parents that basically just give that kid one extra. I mean, you're a year older. You're a little bit more developed physically, mentally, technically.
Yeah, I would have been a 90-pound freshman wrestling 103 pounds. So that was the big thing. And my brother got held back twice because he was that small. So, yeah. So he was like 19, 20 days after his senior year started. So, yeah. I went to Grand Ledge. I turned 18. And things were like I fought my dad when I was 16. Like I fought him. I took him down a double leg, punched him in his gut a few times, and took off running out of the house. And then I had to come back to the house. And so now things were real standoffish. You know, my dad.
Where did it start to go downhill with the family?
It had been downhill for a long time because of the abuse. The wrestling, the cutting weight, I think it just got out of control with like the whoopings, the spankings, the bare butt spankings with the belt. It was just absurd with how like little it took for us to get a spanking or something like that. And so I built a lot of animosity. And then finally when I realized I was strong enough to defend myself, it happened on accident. My dad came in one day and tried to like smack me while I was in bed. It's supposed to be sleeping, and for something I did, we were going to like lighting a torch out in the garage or something like that. And my dad was like, "Get your ass to bed." And I went to bed, and he came in, and it was an instinctual reaction to protect myself that one time, because normally I would just take it. And finally, I grabbed his hand, and then he tried to smack me with his other hand. I grabbed that hand, and I was so strong at this point. I was doing a lot of strength and conditioning and stuff, and I sat up with his hands and was like, sat up and pushed him back. And then I pushed him back, and then he got me in a headlock, and he had his fist cocked back, and I said, don't do it. Don't you fucking do it. And my dad, to that point, had never hit me with a closed fist, ever. It had always been front hand or a backhand or the belt or something like that. And then when he hit me with that closed hand, I ripped out of his headlock, double-legged him, attacked him, and then left. But that from that point on, when my dad would say, if it was like something, I would started actually voicing how I would feel, and that was never allowed. And then once I defended myself, I started voicing, no, that's not right, or this. And then it was like, oh, you're back talking? Oh, I'm going to smack you. And it was like, no, you're not. And it was like, oh, why not? Because I'm going to stop you. And then from that point on, so for 2 years, it was like that. And then when I turned 18, that's when I was like, I'm gone. And that's where I talked about with my brother, like how it felt like I left him there to now deal with, at that home situation.
So to this day, are you close with that family, or was it like you were excited to get away, or have you mended the relationship? Have you come to a mutual kind of like respect level? Where does it stand?
So yeah, for the longest time I tried to come back, and I like not come back and live with them, but try to like be friends. And for a while they wanted the parent-child relationship kind of thing, and I'm like, look, like we can't do that, And so then once I had my son, I was like, I need to mend this relationship because I want my son to have his grandparents in his life. And so now, yes, things are better. We're on where we can at least talk to each other. So things are getting better, and it's going to be a progress, and it's going to be, but now since I had my son, we're actually working toward, both of us are actually putting our heads together and actually making things get better kind of thing. Before it was just one or the other.
So how did you get into mixed martial arts? So you're the wrestler, you're doing really well, you have a chip on your shoulder, you're kind of out to prove yourself to the world, which is kind of why I got into mixed martial arts too. But how did you first find mixed martial arts? How did you get training? And then let's talk about like building up as an amateur. When did it click for you? Like that's what you wanted? And even if it clicked then, and then let's also talk about like when did it really click for you that like, you know what, I'm going to be a professional fighter and this is what I'm going to do with my life. Let's talk about your journey into mixed martial arts, and then like different pivotal moments where you think like you went to another level of belief or dreams, etc.
Okay, so this is gonna tie back into that previous question a little bit with the schooling thing. So so basically, when I turned 18, I left my parents' house. I started partying and hanging out with the wrong people. Was living at a dump house, and like was just partying, figuring out when the next party was, figuring out when the next, when we were going out, and it was every day we were going out and drinking. So from that March when I left till that next October, September when school started, I did nothing but drink and partied. I went from being shredded, 7% body fat, to being like 119 pounds, to then being about 145, like almost 30% body fat in a matter of 4 months. And so in that time, I was like, I got to do something to compete. I want to compete. I was a competitor, and the people I was living with, they would fight here and there and stuff like that. And so that was really what I picked up fighting, and it became a habit of like, oh, there's a fight show coming up. Ron DeLeon would have shows, and I would go to a gym. I would go to Leroy's gym over at Soldados back when he was over off Pennsylvania, and I'd be like, hey, Leroy, I got a fight coming up. You want to get me ready? He's like, okay, when's your fight? Oh, this weekend. And he's like, oh, okay. If you got to fight, man, I'll help you. I'll do what I can.
Leroy's a good guy, man. I've known a lot of people in the fight game for a long time, and there's a lot of pieces of shit in the fight game, a lot of snake people that I would never associate myself with unless, we just happen to be in the same sport. But Leroy's really one of the good ones, man.
Yeah,
I truly
he's a
believe
great
that.
guy.
For as much as I know him, I believe he's a great guy.
That's why when I'm in Lansing, we get workouts together and stuff like that. And so, yeah, so he would help me out, and I would go, and we would get a game plan, and I would go fight. And I was having success. And at this time, I was fighting at 135. And I was missing weight by like 5 pounds every time. Like, it was bad. So, yeah, I started fighting doing that. And then basically, yeah, so people were talking. They were like, look, I kept hearing it. I would be at parties. And people knew who I was. And they were like, dude, like, what happened to you? Like, what's going on? I was like, I'm just fighting now here and there. And they're like, dude, if you really want to fight and you want to be successful, dude, take your ass back to school and go to college and wrestle in college. Then you'll be really ready to fight. And so then I kept hearing it and hearing it and hearing it. And after hearing it so much, it was like, okay, that's what I need to do. So that's when I was still homeless at this point, living on a couch. And so then I would go from, so I basically, I went back and did my senior year of high school at Grand Ledge. And then I dropped out because I couldn't get to school from Lansing because I was in school of choice at the time. I was living in Lansing, and my biological mom would take me when she could, but I was missing like 4 days out of the week.
Hold on. I didn't even know you re-met your biological mom. Or had you always known her from the time you were little?
Yeah, so my parents had let her like have like visitation. So she had a daughter, my sister Amelia. So then we got to see her for like Christmas, holidays, birthdays, stuff like that. So I got to see her growing up, so I knew who she was. And so then like when I left my parents' house, I started mending a relationship with her. And so then she did what she could to take me to school and stuff like that, but I was missing so much school that I just dropped out. And then I completely dropped out, partied again, was fighting, doing whatever, and then the next school year came around, and about a month and a half before school started, oh no, scratch that. When I didn't have a way to get to school in Michigan, I hit up a guy who was in Vegas or in California, who had been running tournaments and stuff, like national tournaments. They would fly us out to go for national dual tournaments and stuff like that. So that's how I met the guy. And so I was like, Ernie, like, hey, I need a way to get out to school, man. Like, I'm homeless right now. I'm not even getting to school. And he was like, look, I'm gonna do what I need to do. I'm gonna help you out. So he actually brought me out to a tournament. And then I ended up getting hooked up with a family to go out to California and to get back into school and wrestling. And they were just, trying to help another human being and who was in real trouble. And so I ended up getting back into school there, was going to school, was at school every day, started doing my books, but I had picked up smoking weed. And I got in trouble for smoking weed in California, in the school, in the bathroom during school. And I got suspended, and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to come home. So then I ended up coming home and dropped out completely after that. And then when the next year came around, next school year, I had like a moment of clarity sitting on the couch and was like, I need to go back to school. So then I hit up a guy who I had met the year before at a national tournament, the last national tournament I had ever wrestled, as like a successful wrestler. He's like, yeah, hit me up if you ever need anything. You know what I mean? He's like, I like to see Mexicans do well. He was a Mexican himself, and so he was looking out. And so I hit him up out of like a whim, and he was like, yeah, come down. So I stayed with him and his mom, and was going to school in Iowa City. And when I was going to school in Iowa City, the wrestling I couldn't wrestle. Because I was too old at that time, but I was helping out with the wrestling team. I was going to school. I was getting the grades, but I was still partying at this time. And the wrestling coach at the school that I was going to school at, his former teammate, was the head coach at Iowa Lakes Community College, where I went and wrestled and ended up wrestling. He came and drove 5.5 hours to the house where I was living at and visited me and said, hey, you graduate school, I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to bring you out here, and we're going to get you back on track, and we're going to get you to a Division I school in 2 years. And I was like, okay, so I stayed committed to him. And then so I ended up getting kicked out of that house where I was staying at because I was partying. I think I got in an MMA fight at some barn with somebody, came back with a split eye open. They were like, you got to go. So then I ended up staying 2 nights in a laundromat, and ended up calling one of my buddies, Mario, to come to help me out. And he got me a bus ticket back home. And so I got a bus ticket back home, and then I hit up my mom. She was staying in Williamston. So I started going to school there, and then I ended up getting kicked out of there because of the guy that she was with was like, nah, you got to go, because I was just being a complete shithead. And so I was going to school at Williamston, was getting the grades there, and then I went to and then once I got kicked out of there, I hit up another guy who I grew up wrestling. He was like a coach, and I was like, hey, like, I'm in school. I'm getting the grades. Like, I'm trying to get back to school. I have this opportunity. He was like, oh, I'm willing to help you, man. So I went out to Bay City Central, went out there for a couple months, got a weird itch in my butt, and was like, I'm going to come back. And I went back to Lansing. And then I went back to Lansing. My mom had moved from Williamston and left that guy's place, and then got her own place in Lansing, in a Section 8 housing. So I went and was living in Section 8 housing in Lansing, catching the bus to Lansing Everett, finished up at Lansing Everett, got my diploma, and then that's when I moved out to Iowa Lakes. And then that's when I wrestled in college, and then there would be times where I would forget why I was even wrestling again, because like I had lost the love for it. And then I realized the real reason why I went back and wrestled in college was because of MMA. Because that was what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to be a world champion one day, and I knew that when that was that moment of clarity that I had, that I wanted to be a world champion. In order for me to be a world champion, I had to go back and wrestle in college. And that would be like I would have that moment of clarity again when I was like, why the hell am I doing this? That's right. I want to be a world champ in MMA. And then it would bring me back and refocus.
Man, that is an incredible story. I mean, the amount of schools and the amount of times you could have just given up on yourself and not gone back. Do you think that ties into like being in the foster care home and being a kid that had to move all around in different family? Like most people, if they get knocked down once like that, right? And it seems like every door is shut, life's over. They're now a victim, and the only reason I didn't graduate was because of this. Every single time a door shut, you just refused to keep it shut. You found another door that you could kick open. Where do you think that trait comes from in you?
You definitely, like, I think you nailed it, because it's like, the moving around at an early age, and then just realizing, like, I think it developed like a resiliency and like a hardy personality in me that no matter what, I can always overcome circumstances. And then using my gift of natural like ability and talent to then open those doors, like you're saying. Like my talent is and abilities and my hard work that I had been cultivated throughout, living with my dad, and all the hard work and knowing how to work hard at an elite level. That all of that kind of like boiled into like being able to continuously knock those doors down.
So you and I actually we knew each other across the scene lightly, right? Like I had seen you at a couple MMA events like the Ron DeLeon. Shout out to the OG out of Lansing. I was fighting a little bit at the time. I saw you here and there. But I don't really remember too much other than I remember at one point in time you did come into SFS, and I remember being like, oh man, like, this guy's been a fighter for a while, he's training. What stage of your life was that at when you came in the first time? Because you've gone through tremendous personal growth, even from there until the man you are now. What point of your life was that? Was that right after you got back from college, or like where was that? Let's talk about that time of your life. So you go back to school for wrestling, you wrestle in college, you're tapped back into that idea that, hey, I'm doing this because I'm going to become a world champion one day. Like, I'm going to create a legacy. I'm going to use my skills and talents and all this resiliency and characteristics I picked up to get somewhere that I value. Kind of set the scene for me. You come back from college. Is that where I met you? Let's just talk about that period.
Yeah, so even like through college, like this goes back to that point I brought up earlier about how choosing my circle has always been a battle for me. So like yeah, I went and wrestled in college. I had gotten in some trouble on campus at SIUE where I was wrestled. So right after season, I had wrestled 2 NCAA tournaments for SIUE, and right after season, I was about a year out from graduation, maybe a year and a half out from graduation, and I got in trouble on campus, and I had to be removed from campus. And if you get in trouble on campus, you're automatically done. Like you can't go to school there anymore. Like you're kicked out. Now, if you get in trouble off campus, it's a totally different thing. But because I got kicked out, I was like, shit. I was living in the dorms. I was on a full ride scholarship. So then my home in Illinois was now gone. So then I had to come back to Michigan, and I was upset. And that's also now where my wrestling career was done. So my wrestling career was done. So my identity as who I truly am is completely gone. I don't know who I am. I just lost everything. So I was in a dark place. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to pick up training again. So that's when I started coming with Zach and Josh. This was in 2017. And so, like I said, I was still an angry person. I was still upset because I was dealing with identity issues. I was upset that I lost, everything that had been working for such a long time. And so then I was coming up here, and then I just was, your positivity. And it was just, I was at a place where I was not mentally ready to be around this arena, really, at SFS. And so then I kind of like backed away again. And then so like I was in a mentally still in a mentally pretty shadowy place when I came here. And that's why, and I don't know if you could tell that I was dealing mentally with some stuff, and that's what I was suffering from.
It looked like a man that was desperately trying to pick himself up, but was being like beaten by the darkness. Like you whatever you were battling with was winning the battle. And the Shawls were trying to motivate the best out in you. I was trying to motivate the best out in you. But it was almost like you were gripped by the failures or the things that you were struggling with, and you hadn't broken free from that yet. That was the feeling that I got. So I always try to inspire and bring out greatness in people. But I remember thinking, like, this kid is struggling. And I don't know why, but like there's a lot of talent, but he is struggling. I could just feel it almost. You know what I mean? So then I recently learned about these details during our road trip. So then you actually moved out of Michigan again, but you continued pursuing MMA. There's some crazy stories coming up. For the people that are listening to this podcast, if you've made it this far, there are some incredible stories coming up. Make sure you don't tune in. Trust me, I was blown away during the road trip. So you left Michigan again. You just said, hey, I'm going to pick up and leave. Talk about how that took place, where you went to live, and just start explaining that period of your life. You're still fighting. You have your goals. You're probably carrying a lot of the anger from the college thing. I'm sure that really stuck a dagger in your heart, man, to be back in college wrestling and then get kicked out again. Especially, it's something that even if it was back to like that girl situation, you put yourself in a situation, regardless of who was at fault or how it happened, you put yourself in a situation where you were able to fail again. Definitely. Right? So let's talk about that period of your life.
Yeah, so I had been up here in Michigan at the time. And again, I like when you seen me, I was at probably about a 4 or 5, and I went all the way down to about an 8 or a 9 on like the level of darkness that I went to the point where one of my brothers who was wrestling up at Muskegon Community College, Benny Gomez, he noticed it and was like, dude, you need to come live with me. He's like, I don't care. You can stay on the couch. I don't care. But he's like, I'm going to talk to the coach about getting you on staff. So then I got an opportunity to come out there and help him out and help Muskegon Community College out for the year. And so we did that, and I started working with those guys. And Benny ended up making the national finals. And there was another kid on the team named Bacher who did really well. He ended up having an outbreak year and took third at nationals. And he was getting recruited down to Life University in Atlanta, and they brought up Benny's name, and Benny was trying to go Division I, so he wasn't even looking or even wouldn't even hear about anything other than Division I. But the coach down there was like, "Hey, can you get Benny Gomez?" And he's like, I don't think so, but if there is a way, you got to get Freddie Rodriguez down here." So then he's like, "Okay." So then he started talking to me, and I'm like, "Oh yes, I can finish school, I can get my degree, I can go down there and coach." So then I went down there and started coaching, and so then basically I went down there and I was living. I hit up a buddy who was an old teammate, and
An old teammate from where?
from Oklahoma.
Got it.
An old teammate, and basically he's like, "Yeah, you can stay with me." He's like, "We got a place," and I get down there, and none of the roommates knew that I was coming to live there. He said, "Did you pay me? Just pay $250 a month, and you're good." And nothing was addressed to nobody. So then I come down there, I have no place to live, and so I'm like staying on that couch. There's like a lot of not so good things going on there. Again, hanging out with the wrong people now, and I start falling back into the party scene a little bit. But I'm always taking care of business when it comes to school, because at the end of the day, I don't care. I'm getting my degree, and so that's where we're at there. Do you want me to keep going?
Yeah, I mean, I think this next part of your story, this is where you started to find yourself again. This is where the spark happens. This is where the light switch flips for you. You know what I mean? And it's those moments in life that are so incredibly powerful, pivotal, and sometimes necessary. It's weird to think that sometimes you have to go to the darkest places possible, but it is necessary for the person that you're meant to become. So I think, and you don't have to list names or anything like that,
Right.
but I think you should paint a very clear picture about what your life looked like for people to understand, and then the pivotal moments that led to a Freddie Rodriguez now that is like almost detached completely from the man that you once were, and you're able to look at it through a different lens and be like, wow, like, why was I doing that? What was I doing? What was I thinking? How was I allowing that? How was I not analyzing the situation around me, etc.? Because that is what has brought out your greatness. And for other people, you're leaving clues. People that are in the darkness, there's millions of people around the world that are in the darkness right now, that are completely surrounded by it, enveloped by it. Maybe they don't see any light, and they might have to hit their bottom before they get out of it. But like, people that break free leave clues on how to do so.
Definitely. So basically, so this is a story that I don't think I didn't tell it on the road trip, but this is right a couple months before the big incident that happened. So I was going out, I was upset. So I was upset about something, and my first thing to do when I was upset was I want to go drink. So that coping mechanism was not good. So then I ended up going out, and we went to a couple different bars, and ended up getting to where it was like, okay, I pay for the drinks here, and then we went to these other bar, and the girl she was supposed to pay for the drinks at the next bar, because I had no more money. I tapped out on all of our drinks, and then we go to another bar, and we order some drinks and stuff, and then it goes time to pay for it, and her card's declined. She has no money or something for some reason. So then now I've already taken the shot, started drinking the beer, and now we have no way to pay for it. So then the lady's like, the bar owner's like, all right, you need to get the hell out of here. The girl's like, all right, you guys go. I'm going to take care of this because I ordered the drinks. Okay. So then all of a sudden I go to leave the bar, and all of a sudden I get I get completely out of the bar, and all of a sudden I get maliciously grabbed up from behind. And I break away, and I turn around, and before I can even respond to who it was, I'm already in fight mode. I turn around, boom, 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 hit him with a 5-piece, and then I realize it's a cop. I realized it was a cop. So then now I'm in trouble, down in Atlanta, right in Buckhead, and I'm in jail. And a crazy thing, have you ever seen 60 Days In? Never. So it's like a show where they go undercover into the jails and stuff like that, and they see what they can find out about what's going on. The cell I was in was literally on that show in Fulton County. Yeah, 515 was my actual like thing, and it's always on there when they're in Fulton County. So it's crazy, but so yeah, that was like another thing that took me a step back and really reminded me about putting myself in a situation that I could have been it could have been avoided. So after that, I stopped going out completely. I stopped going out to the bars, and I was like done. So then I started getting better and better with everything.
Now, are you still coping at this point? Are you still struggling and battling shit and then drinking at home, or were
So
you able to drop everything?
so I switched from I stopped drinking and I actually started doing a lot of like shrooms. I started taking a lot of shrooms and so then I stopped. So I wasn't even drinking at this point. I really started just introspecting so deeply when I was taking these mushrooms, and I would never.
Do you think jail sparked that, or what sparked the initial, or like what made you go, I need to look inward? Or was it you did this experience one time and then all of a sudden you started inner reflection deeper than you had ever done
So
it?
I think for me it was that the fact that I knew I couldn't go out and drink, and so I needed something to cope, and the cope was an escape. I needed an escape, and then I think the mushrooms is what allowed me to escape. And then like I knew that it was like a form of medicine, so I started looking into it, and I would never suggest anyone to do this without like a doctor, to be able to provide you with the exact dosage you need and stuff like that. I was going off the rails, like I was going completely crazy with it. I was going 5, 10 grams, 14 grams of mushrooms and stuff like that, crazy. And so like
Really quick, because you can't skip past that as a man that's never done mushrooms or any psychedelics in my entire life. What is that experience? Explain to me as best as you can in a sober state. What was the experience like? And like, what is it doing for you? What are you experiencing? What emotions do you feel? Why did it change you?
So it changed me. So basically, I would have basically what they call is what's called ego dissolution, which a lot of people call ego death, where you literally completely remove yourself from your ego, and now you're able to look at your behaviors and your actions and your thought processes, and instantaneously know what's right and what's wrong, and what you've been doing, what's right and what's wrong. And then now when I was setting intentions, I had like a full board of like intentions where I would put compassion. I needed compassion. I needed like love, and I needed like gratitude, and I needed to appreciate life itself. And so like those were my intentions when I was doing these things. I wasn't doing them just to like escape at this point. Now I was doing them to like full on grow and fix the way that I was.
So it was almost helping you to reconnect with who you really are deep down past everything, because you said like instantly you had clarity with difficult decisions, with actions that have been made, with events in your life. Well, that clarity can only come from the essence of what you are, knowing what you should have done. Because otherwise there would still be a question of, should I have done this or that? You had clarity.
Yeah.
How does this happen? I'm fascinated by this part before we move on. Is it like when you say I had this, the ego is being destroyed, you take this substance and now all of a sudden you're like looking at things through a different lens for the first time ever? Like try to make it make sense.
So basically, it'd be like whether you call it God or truth or consciousness or light or whatever it is, whatever you want to, like anyone, whatever their preference is, that's what it was. I was directly connected to the source, directly connected to truth. And like, it was just information that would just come to me. And like, it was a feeling. I would just relax, and it would just come to me of, things that I was doing, or just, and being able to cultivate the feeling of true love and the essence of love and light. And that's what I was feeling. And then what I would feel, that became like the new essence of what I was. And as I would feel it more and more every time I would do it, I'd become more pure. And the only way to explain it, the feeling, so this is the best explanation I can give of how it feels. It's like you're on fire. It's like a phoenix rising from the ashes. You see the ashes, but then you see the fire and it rising, and it's all of that. Seeing it a phoenix burn and then rise to the ashes. All of that simultaneously is the feeling that I had when I was in those trips. So it was like liberating, but at the same time burning a deep. It was like it was burning the bad, evil inside of me, and then every part that was burning would be reborn into like purity.
Yeah, that is the story of the phoenix. That is burning to the ashes and then created anew, like in then blaze of glory. This, so you were like shedding some of the pain, shedding some of the trauma, steering your mind with truth about what you are, acceptance about things that have happened. You started to let go of all the things. It's almost like the darkness had a hold of you so tight, and you started to be able to like shake that grip. And then that probably became an addiction that like, wow, this is better.
It did. It became an addiction, and then that's when the addiction became like, okay, like at what point? And like I said, at first it was 3.5 grams, and then next thing you know, I'm on 5 grams, and like typically they call it the hero dose, which is 5 grams, which I wouldn't suggest anybody doing, but like I would do 5, and then next thing you know, I'm doing almost 3 times that amount. And then I had this one experience one time where I was almost like drowning myself in a tub because I literally reached the point of, like you said, so I reached the point where so when I would have a bad trip, I would go and I would take a bath and I would try to settle down. And I was listening actually to Revolution. It's called Courage to Grow, and I got into this other realm where I was having a full on one-on-one conversation with God, and I argued with God. And then once I realized I was arguing with God, I like backflipped out of it, and it was like, what the hell is wrong with you? And then I went and took a bath because I started freaking out because I was like, holy shit, I was just talking with God. Like it was like the essence of it, the full on essence. It was just back and forth. And I would feel it before, but this time I was actually communicating. And when I realized that, I went and took the bath, and then I there was like an energy, like if my arm had like energy, it was like if my arm was like energies and my arms are by my side, there was an arm of energies that was pushing this energy outside of my energy, and all I was seeing was a light. And then once I pushed it all out of my body, it was a shadow. It was like a grayish, like murky shadow, and it was touching my light, which was like a light clear smoky color, and then it was touching the gray, and it was outside of my body. So my clear was here, and then it was touching, and then the gray smoky dark stuff was out here, and it was looking at me. It was an energy, and it was looking at me and using my eyes to see me, and I was using my eyes to see it. So there was like a medium of my eyes that were being used, and it wasn't like here me looking at it. It was like on some other space, but I was there. And I said, you are no longer in control. You are not in control. I am. And then it went and came back into my body. And that's when I started dunking myself because I was like, there's a demon in me. Like there's some evil shit in me. And so then I literally got on the phone with Marissa and was like, I need an exorcism right now. Like, was freaking out, like, dude, like panicking, like 3 a.m, like just freaking out. And she's up in Michigan freaking out. And so it was like, it was crazy. So then that was the farthest away I got from myself. And then once I came back to myself, I realized that was actually my shadow. That was my darkness. And it had been in control. It had been in control, but my light self, my perception of it is that I pushed it out of me, told it I was in control, and then ever since then, I hadn't had a desire to trip, haven't had a desire to do shrooms or none of that, haven't done it since, and I've just been who I am and been like that essence of that love and light is what is exerted from me every day now. I meditate and I do all that stuff. I meditate an hour a day, but I so it's like that's also helping, but at the same time that was like the number one biggest situation that's ever shifted it on a level of like exponential growth.
Yeah, that's insane. That's an experience that so few people will ever have in their life, and it was probably a dramatic shift. And now when you come down from that and you've had this vivid experience, this, just this unforgettable instance. I could tell by the emotion as you were telling that story. It's an unforgettable, vivid experience that you've lived through that no one will really fully understand, no matter how many words you use.
Right. That's the best way I could describe it.
So when you go back into normal life, the next morning you wake up, you're a changed man. But that doesn't necessarily mean that all your actions are different. That doesn't necessarily mean that you start living completely differently and you cut out other things that are unhealthy for you, right? But you're different. How does that begin to change your life? And then what is the next big moment, which this was the one I heard about in the car, that really made you go, okay, like, maybe back to that same, I'm putting myself in a situation that is going to be beyond my control, that is going to put me somewhere I don't want to be. So how did it change you immediately after? And then what was the next massive spark? And then, how did you get back to Michigan?
Okay, so basically, and mind you, this whole time I'm on probation. I'm on probation from that incident with the cop, and so now, basically, I'm still in that home. I'm still over there where I moved in Georgia, and there's a lot of trapping, going on in the house, drug dealing or whatever, and people are coming in and out of the house. But oh no, so that next day, I seen the world from a different lens. But like you said, I still had to put the work in. I had to put the legwork in. I had to meditate. I had to focus on still who I wanted to become. But the lightness, the darkness, I would say the darkness didn't have the grip on me that it had before, which then made the choices easier to make to then become the better person I needed to become. So right there, like that situation where I did that, I pulled it out and said, I'm in control. It took that grip off of me onto the level of what it had. And so then, I'm still in that home. I had no way to remove myself from the situation. So then now, there's guys coming in and out of the door. I would always come in and open the door, and guys would, lead them to the back room or whatever. And so one day, a guy knocks on the door. I open the door. I'm like, okay, let's go to the back. And the door like swings open. And I like look back and I'm just like, okay, something's not right. And the guy's like 4 feet, 5 feet behind me. And then I look back again and he's right behind me. And I'm just like, and I knew something wasn't right. And then I turn around and all of a sudden, wham, it felt like I got hit in the head with a hammer, like a hammer. And as I got hit in the head, the gun goes off. It was a gun that the guy had and he pistol whipped me right in the back of my head. I fall to the ground. We're in a little hallway, about probably this wide right here, a hallway. And I fall to the ground. I'm leaking all over the place, blood. And I roll over to my back and I'm like, you shot me. Like, I really genuinely thought I might have got shot because it hurt that bad. And all of a sudden I have ringing in my ear from the gun. You smell the gunpowder. And so then mind you, there's people, there's 1, 2, 3 people in the house. And nobody helps. Nobody does nothing. I'm like, you shot me. He's like, no, I didn't. And I'm like, yeah, you did. And the guy gets too close. He got too close with the gun, and it was right behind me. And right now I'm thinking this guy's trying to kill me. I'm thinking life or death right now. And all this guy's thinking is he's trying to rob us. And so then I take his wrist and I roll it out and I double leg him. I pick him up. I bury him to the ground. He stands back up. I double leg him and I push him through the door. We go into the bathroom. The door closes behind us. And then I ram him into the wall. I pick him up. I bury him again. He gets up one more time. I pick him up, except for this time, instead of picking him up this way, I spiked him straight down to the ground. And then as he goes to get up again, and I had been training jiu-jitsu for a few weeks, leading up to this situation, and I pull guard, and then I go straight to a Kimura grip, and I turn the gun on his knee. The gun's touching his knee, and now I have a wrist lock for the Kimura, so I can't get to the trigger. So now, or no, scratch that. I went guillotine first, pinned it down, and started screaming for help. After about what felt like a minute, and screaming at the top of my lungs, nobody's coming to help me. So then I shrimped to a Kimura, and then I went to put the gun on him. And that's when I'm like, okay, how am I going to get to this trigger? So now I'm trying to slide my grip over to the trigger, and that's when the gun gets loose. And then I was like, you know what? I relaxed. I was like, this is how I die. And I had a weird feeling. It was like there was a portal that started opening up as soon as I started accepting death and accepting this is how I die. There was an energy around me. It was weird. It was like a weird energy. And looking back, I'm thinking I don't know if it was all my guardian angels at one time or what it was coming and trying to look out. But the guy got the gun and put it on me, and I was like, look, take whatever you want, take whatever you want, whatever. And so then he ended up getting what he came for, and they left. And but yeah, so that situation was like another situation, and that was like the situation, I think, where it was like I needed to remove myself from that house, but as long as I was on that couch, I was not gonna leave. As long as they were gonna let me stay, I was gonna stay there. And that's where it was like there's something a lot greater for me out there in the world. And God, the way I see it is, God said, if you're not gonna move, I'm gonna remove you. And that was the way. And that was the way of removing me. And it sounds pretty messed up, but at the same time, like, there's a lot of things that have now changed for the better, and my life has become a lot better after that pistol whip. And so that's the next thing that really changed my entire life. Those two incidents from that shroom trip and that pistol whip are the two almost single most things that have changed me into like who I am today.
100%. In that moment, accepting that, like, I'm going to die right here on this floor, living, this is the end of my story. That is an incredibly powerful moment, and something, again, you will remember so clearly, more than most of your life, forever. When you get out of that experience, well, actually, one thing that's huge is screaming for help for the people that were around you, your boys, right? Mm-hmm. You're all in the same spot, your homies, and nobody came. I remember when you told me that story driving down on the road trip, I was like, what? Like, yeah. I couldn't imagine being in an environment, because, like, I've got a lot of people that love me around me and a lot of people that care about me, and I care about them. I couldn't imagine fighting for my literal life with a firearm in the mix, screaming for help, and nobody coming. There's a certain, like, a lot of the times in this life we are on our own, and if we give our best, people will want to be around us. But that moment must have been chilling. And then after that, so you go through that experience, you've gotten the better perspective from the mushroom trip. You've had this now horrific experience that says you're not staying on this couch. You're getting your ass out of this situation.
Yeah, and that was just a few weeks after the mushroom trip too.
So now the next day, how does your life start to change? How quickly do you get out of there? And then reflecting back, how insane was that period of your life?
Yeah, so I left that next day. That next day, that happened at like 10 or 11 at night, and that next day I left. I packed up my stuff. I had a buddy who was on the wrestling team, and me and him like would go and hike and stuff, so we got kind of close. And he was living in the dorms, and he didn't never stay at the dorms because he lived like 20 minutes from home. He just had it in case he had an early morning workout. He would stay there and stuff. So I asked him if I could pay him to stay in his dorm, and he let me stay in the dorm the remainder of the school year, which this would happen in like April. So like there was another whole month and a half that I stayed at the dorms and got to live there and finish up school. So that allowed me to have some space to myself to really kind of really introspect even more and to like see what happened. And so like after that I stopped hanging out with people like that, and I stopped putting myself in. I really became more skeptical of who I put myself around, and I haven't been putting myself around people like that since that day, and just now to this day I'm weary of people in general now. So it's like, it's pretty, it can get pretty, weird when I see people and they have that same vibe, and I'm just like, I feel that energy.
And you can feel it.
Yeah.
That's something I've always been extremely good at, is I feel people's energy. And I don't really judge people based on that energy, because I've seen people go, through tremendous transformation. But like, I can always feel energy that people bring. And so if someone's extremely low level, my goal is to try, and I say low level, I don't mean like you're a low level person. I just mean your energy is vibrating at an extremely low level. Like, you're the shady person. You're the person I would not trust at all. You're the...
Those low vibrating energies you're talking about, it's like shame, guilt. There's like low vibrating energies, and it's a scale. And then as you get up, you got love, you got peace, you got joy, happiness, and it's like you said, the low and high.
100%. And you can feel that out of people, especially if you're in touch with it. if you kind of tune out some of the distractions, you don't worry about what your eyes see, you don't worry about the words that they say, you feel the energy radiating from the person. I've always had that gift. So that's why I feel like I believe in a lot of people where other people be like, oh, that person's a blah, 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 and they write them off. No, they're just stuck in this level right now. That doesn't mean they can't change. We just have to make them understand why it's worth changing. So you're training at that same MMA school down there, and one of the guys you were living with are the fighters on that team. How are you even able to go to practice after that experience? Did you just do it because you've been through shit your whole life, so you just did it, but you kind of knew it was time to get out of there? Or did you immediately leave that situation?
Well, no. So those guys that I was training with there were actually we were training together at a jiu-jitsu gym in Atlanta. And then once I left there, I found a different gym to train at. So I was at a different gym, which is when I found my coach Manu down there, who was the 5-time Muay Thai champ and that's where I started picking up on my stand-up. So that was when I found a different one, and he was a very spiritual person. They called him the shamanic. I forget what his nickname was. He was the shamanic warrior kind of thing. But so being able to go over there and start talking to him and being able to talk to a like-minded person on a spiritual level was super cool. So that started really shifting my perspective and the positivity about how, the lifestyle of what it takes to become a champion. That's where I really started integrating that into my life, was after learning about what it truly takes to become a world champion.
So then you're still fighting, because if I remember, you fought for TWC. You came back up here to Michigan and you fought on Pete's show, right?
Ron's. It was on.
It was on Ron's show. Okay, so you came back up, fought here in Michigan on Ron's show.
And that was I hadn't even had a gym, so I went and trained with Manu right directly after that fight. So at the time I was out of shape. I was just getting back into shape when all this happened, and then I had to take 3 months off because of my head. I had staples in my head, and I had to really sit out for a long time. So I went ahead and came and got into shape on campus. For that, was doing bag work, strength and cardio, and stuff like that.
When you say on campus, you're talking about here?
At Life University.
Okay.
So I was at Life. I was doing bag work. I was doing the strength and conditioning and stuff like that. And then I went up in here and fought for Ron's show. And then when I left, I won the fight. It was for a title. And I went back down there and I found a gym. And then I got another title fight for the NFC down there right away, 6 weeks later. So Manu was kind of mad when I came to him and was like, hey, I have a title fight for the NFC in 6 weeks. And I was fighting a real fighter this time, a dude who was good. And so I got ready in 6 weeks, and I ended up, losing that fight. I won the first round, and then I got guillotined with 3 seconds left in the second round and lost. But that's what really made me. That loss also picked me up into understanding, look, wrestling's not going to get me far. You know what I mean? I have to become a mixed martial artist. And then that's when I started cultivating and understanding, okay, I need to be training 5, 6, 7 days a week. I need to live the lifestyle. I need to stop partying. And then once I did that, after that loss, I became a real mixed martial artist.
And then how many fights did you have in your amateur career after that loss? And then how did you start making the decision that it's time for me to turn pro? What brought you back to Michigan? Why did you pick SFS? Let's start to craft that part of your story.
Okay, yeah. So that fight was in March. And then after that fight, COVID hit right after that. So that was March. And then that next Tuesday, COVID hit. And everything shut down. So then everything was quarantined. So then I'm sitting here just, doing nothing at all, chilling, getting all chubby. So then once the restrictions and all that stopped, I started training again. So I took 2.5, 3 months off, got super chubby again. And then once everything came back, I started training around, I want to say July again. So then I started training in July. And I didn't have the money to go to Manu at the time. And so I got a hold of a guy that I met at the gym at Manu's who was working out in Noonan. And I started training with him. He was a mixed MMA coach. So to this point, I hadn't worked with an MMA program or anything. I was just doing jiu-jitsu or Muay Thai, and I just hadn't been able to put my skills together. And so I went out to Doug's and started training out there. I got to train for free because I was coaching wrestling twice a week. So I did that in return. So I was going out there 4 days a week and training there. And then I got the money to go, and I started getting sponsors again. So I started paying my gym membership. So then now I was going between Manu's and Doug's, and I fought again in that December. I fought for a vacant title because Shamel, the guy I lost to, was going pro. So they vacated it, and I was the next one to get it. So I fought and won a unanimous decision fight, and that one.
Was that the show that I was at?
No. So that was before that one. So that fight was in December, and then I had a fight that I was supposed to fight down at what promotion was that again?
Was it Valor or was
Valor,
it? I think it was
yeah,
Valor.
Valor FC. The fight was supposed to happen in March, and then the kid, I guess, hurt his hand and it got pushed back, and so then I didn't know it. Like, I didn't know. They just like, okay, this date and this date. So I just stayed ready the whole time. So now it went from March to June, and that was the worst thing they could have done for themselves, was to keep pushing it back. So then that's when I seen you in June. And my coach was late to the event.
Yeah, I actually thought I was going to corner you. You came up to me and you were like, hey, man, if my coach doesn't get here in time, will you corner me? You know what I mean? I had only briefly known you, but I was like, of course, dude, 100%. You know what I mean? Like, you had come in here a little bit. Like, we had a relationship. And you were like, if he doesn't make it, will you corner me? And I'm like, yeah, definitely, man. And then he made it last minute.
Because you had held pads for me to warm up.
Correct.
Yeah, so I ended up going there, and I fought that guy and finished him in the third round, and that was the best fight.
That was an awesome fight.
Thank you. So yeah, that was the fight where it was like, okay, I think we're getting ready to that level of where it's like, okay, let's go pro, you know? So then...
Was that your last amateur fight?
That was my last amateur fight, yeah. And mind you, actually, in that December fight before that, the day before my fight, I found out my girlfriend was pregnant. So then through that whole time, you seen how pregnant she was when we were down there in Tennessee. Yeah, so, you know, that was it. And then it was like... And then I graduated, and I graduated in September of this past year, and then I got off probation in October. So I was like, you know what, everything. And then my girlfriend, you know, she came back. We came back here for our baby and stuff like that.
Yeah, what brought you back?
The birth of our son. She was like, I'm not gonna have my son down here. I'm going home.
She's from Michigan, too.
Yeah.
She was just living down there.
Yeah, she came down there to live with me, and so we could, you know, be together. And then she's like, yeah, I'm going to go. So I was like, all right, I guess I'm going with you. So then we came back here, and we were in Muskegon, and I had that fight with Jeff in October. And that's when I was like, I found the best gym I could find out that way. So I started training with Triumph MMA, and was training with those guys, got ready. You know, I didn't have the performance that I wanted. I tore some cartilage in my rib like 4 weeks out, so I didn't get to do anything, no grappling, no sparring the last 4 weeks. I just had to try to heal up and did bag work and like strength and conditioning. And so I didn't have the performance that I wanted in that fight, but I still got the unanimous decision. So now I was like, look, we got to find a way. We got to come out to Brighton. I want to train. I knew I wanted to train with you. I knew that was the first place I wanted to be in Michigan, was with you. So I was like, yeah. So we spent 3 months trying to find a place to move out here. It was 3 months on a wait list to try to live out in this area. So as soon as we got the clearance, we came out here and started training right away.
So now you had been in here before with the old energy and the old Freddie and all those things. And like you said, you weren't ready to handle that energy at that point. You know what I mean? There's a different energy radiating in this building. And if you were at that other frequency, it clashes. Like I've always told people, there's a natural filter here. And people, I guess, that don't fit are going to be really insulted by this. But I don't mean it in that way. It's just if you're vibrating at a really low level and you have all these other people that are radiating at a high level, it naturally clashes. It's challenging you in ways that you might not be ready for yet. And if you're going through struggles or internal work and all that, to be around that energy all the time almost drives sometimes people lower because they're witnessing all these other people chasing goals, stepping up, being accountable, crushing it. And it's just a reflection. It's a mirror saying, you're not doing this. And then that drives people further in a hole. So when you came back, explain how, it felt different, how the gym, has connected. Because, like, you've become a part of the family, like fast. You know what I mean? People look at you here and they're extremely proud to have you as a member alongside them. Your work ethic stays top notch. Like, people have really been like, man, this guy is part of our culture. How was it different the second time you came back?
Like you said, I think the biggest thing is my perspective and the way I see the world, just in general. Being able to appreciate the people that are, like you said before, I wasn't chasing dreams I had before. I was just trying to do something, and I, like you said, I was discouraged because I was seeing people accomplish their dreams and chase it down every single day. And it was like, I wasn't ready to be around that. It was kind of discouraging, like you said. And so now when I come in here, that's why I came here. I was like, because I knew how it was. So then, like, being able to be in the right mindset, being where I need to be, doing the things I need to do on a daily basis, coming in here and being able to connect with you guys was super easy. It's super, like, it's like a home, you know what I mean? So it's like, it's nice. It's amazing. And I wouldn't change anything about anything in the way it went.
So now we had a pro debut lined up for you that we were super excited about, but due to a commission issue, which again, you stepped up, took personal responsibility. You came right to me and you said, hey, James, I have this fight that we're going to be prepping for. And then a commission issue from before held you back. And then you really bought in 100%. Where you're like, you know what, man, like, I'm going to entrust you to guide my career, like, look for opportunities. We find a short notice fight, but we like it, makes sense. B2, shout out to them. They run a phenomenal promotion, national level promotion now. It's this weekend. Like, I tried 3 different fights for the people that didn't know. You and I almost had one, and then that fell through. And then we had another one that was kind of like, it was a long shot. We didn't think we were going to get it, but maybe the guy would step up, fell through. And then I was actually working on this one, and I wasn't even telling you because I was like, I know the heartbreak feeling of, like, wanting something and then it falls through, and then wanting something and falls through. That breaks people.
And you were feeling that when I would come into the gym, you were feeling it.
100%. So I'm like, I'm not going to put on this kid that, like, I think I've got an opportunity here, but I want to make it concrete before I tell him. And you know what I mean? And sometimes fighters don't like that. Like, you should tell me right away when you get something. As a coach that guides people and tries to be a mentor, I'm watching your energy. And if I see that you were just heartbroken for an opportunity, I'm not going to tell you about another one that I think's going to happen, and then it falls through again. It's just going to push you down lower. The guy accepts. We're going down this weekend, Bowling Green, Kentucky, to fight in your professional debut. How good does that sound? After everything you've been through, after your story, the fact that this weekend a new chapter opens. There's a brand new pen going to the page that is writing chapter 1 of the Rodriguez professional MMA career. How does that sound? How does that feel? Talk about your emotions leading up to this weekend.
Man, dude, like, it's crazy. It's sometimes I tear up and, like, get this, like, feeling of just, like, overwhelming gratitude and just thankfulness and just gratefulness. Every morning I'm waking up and praying and just being grateful for everything I do have and everything that is in my life, and just for the strength to continue being who I am. And all praise to God, because without him, like, this wouldn't be possible. And so it's just amazing, and I can't thank you enough. And like you said, putting trust into you, trusting in the process is huge. I learned how to trust in the process when I wrestled in college. And then so sometimes, jumping into another process and learning to trust it is tough, So I think we're past that point and where I full on trust you, So I'm excited to work with you, man.
I'm excited about all this, and we're big on the elite energy here. We're being on the come up. I mean, you recently took your first ever road trip with the team, and we electrified a building. We literally lit the world on fire on that weekend,
insane.
Right? We went down there. I mean, Ty Wildemo, head kick knockout on an undefeated 6'6" prospect in 8 seconds. And then we had Bo won his fight by triangle, and Tristan put on a clinic-like performance. I mean, the whole night was just incredible. Jackson Barlow put on arguably the most technical amateur debut I have ever seen as a coach. And I'm not exaggerating that. If you didn't see the Jackson Barlow fight from B2, go watch it. I mean, literally, it was one of the most technical fights I've ever seen in my
If
life.
you would have watched it and been like, that's a UFC fight, everyone would believe you.
Yeah, they would have been like, that was an incredible fight. That was high-level pro, 100%. But you felt the team energy, you know what I mean? And you felt that, like, this is why I'm working this hard. This is why I'm dedicating. This is why I'm giving my best to them and they're giving their best to me. So last thing I want to talk about on this podcast before we wrap it up, you know, for the people that are supporting your career, that have stayed with you from the beginning, to your family, to your friends, to your team, just any message you would want to leave in this moment in time forever before you go into your first ever professional fight. Let's capture the glimpse of, like, what message does Freddie want to send, even to strangers, even to maybe kids with a dream, maybe a kid that's in foster care that is trying to believe that this life has something beautiful for him. Anything you want to capture in this moment.
Man, there's so much I want to say, but
the floor is yours, man. Speak from your heart about, like, as a man that's come from all levels. Like, one thing I love in life, like, success is cool, but I love people that have experienced an incredibly broad perspective of life, from deep darkness, depression, abyss, loneliness, helplessness, to fulfillment, joy, true happiness, success. When you've experienced this, like, massive perspective in life, you're such a more complete human being because you get it. You can connect with people that are struggling, and you can understand greatness. You can be inspired by things that are powerful. You don't reject them or turn away from them or resent them. So your words have a lot of weight now. And, you know, you should know that. And you're a moving brand and a moving representation of the possibility of human beings when they evolve, when they transform. So, man, just any message you'd want to send. Let's say, here's the way I'm going to phrase this question. Speak to the 13-year-old version of Freddie Rodriguez. Send him a message.
All right, so first I want to thank all of my friends and family and people who have supported me and always been there for me. And it's only a handful of people. It's not too many people. But if you are that person, I want you to know that I love you and I appreciate you. And to my new family here at SFS, I love you guys. And I'm so excited to grind with you guys every day. Like, coming in here in the gym, you guys make it easy to come in here and work hard, because you guys are all working hard and chasing dream. Like James always says, we're dream chasers and let's go get it. But, you know, for everyone else, it's my biggest thing is I'm going to leave it and really make it really simple and quick for you guys. Is the darkest part of night is right before the light hits. And I think that's something I love saying that to myself when I'm in a dark place, is that if you go outside and you look, the darkest part of night is right before that sun starts shining through. So make it through that dark part of your night and the sun will shine through.
It's always darkest before the dawn, right? Remember that, and 100%. And most people that have overcome extreme things will back that statement. So if you're in that part where life seems helpless or hopeless or just so dark, maybe you're on the verge of that sunrise in the next day. And then honestly, when you really become the person you're meant to be, you will be appreciative for the dark. You will be grateful for the dark. Because had you never gone through that, you would not be the person you are now. You might be the same person fucking up over and over and doing shit you're not proud of. You'll be thankful. You know what? I had to go through that darkness. And when you have that acceptance in your heart that you had to be that man to be the person you are today, that's where greatness is unlocked. So, man, I hope everybody enjoyed this podcast. I hope everybody tunes into the fight this weekend. It's on b2fs.com. You can stream the fight. The fights are available a couple days after, so by like Wednesday, you're going to see his fight online. You know, it's step one in a journey. It's you know what? There's a new mountain. You've had a lot of mountains you've had to climb in your life already, and you've climbed them. You might have fell down a couple times. You might have rolled back down the hill. You might have had to take a rest on the mountain, but you've conquered some serious mountains already. And now we step foot upon a brand new journey where there's a peak and a pinnacle that we're going to give everything possible to reach. And sometimes you don't even know if you can reach it, but we're on a new journey. And I'm incredibly excited. I hope everybody else is excited. Again, this weekend, B2 Fighting Series. Make sure to tune in. Send your love, send your support, and, we'll wrap this thing up. Thank you for joining me today, brother.
Thank you for having me on.